The alarm on Dr. Teo's ship made a loud sound that hurt his ears. He was sitting in the control room when the red warning lights started flashing. The computer voice kept saying the same thing over and over. "Meteor shower detected. Collision warning. Collision warning." Teo looked out of the window and saw rocks flying toward his ship. Big rocks, small rocks. They were coming very fast. He tried to move the ship away from them, but there were too many. The ship was not fast enough. "No, no, no," Teo said to himself. He pushed the buttons on the control panel. Nothing worked. A big meteor hit the back of his ship with a loud crash. Then another one hit the left side. The ship started to shake very hard. Teo held onto his chair so he would not fall down. The lights inside the ship went dark. Then they turned red. Teo could smell smoke. Fire was starting in the back of the ship. He ran to the escape pod as fast as he could. His hands were shaking as he pressed the buttons to open the pod door. The ship made more noise. More things were breaking. Teo got inside the escape pod and closed the door. He pressed the button to leave the ship. The pod shot out into space with great speed. He looked back and saw his research ship falling. It went down and down toward the moon below. His ship crashed into the rocks far away from him. He watched it burn and then disappear. Teo was alone now. His escape pod was very small. It had air for maybe 2 weeks if he did not move too much. It had food for maybe 10 days. His radio did not work. He had tried to fix it many times, but the meteor strike had broken something inside it. He could not call for help. The moon below was called Kethros 7. It was a very bad place. The air outside could kill a human in seconds. The rocks were sharp and could cut skin. The temperature was so cold that water would freeze instantly. But Kethros 7 was also home to creatures called Vorth. They were very big and very dangerous. They were hunters. They could kill almost anything. Teo had studied the Vorth before. He knew about them. He knew they had big teeth and long claws. He knew they were very strong. He knew they killed other creatures for food. But Teo did not know what else he could do. He had to land somewhere. He had to find shelter. The escape pod would not keep him safe for long. He moved the escape pod down toward the moon. The landing was very rough. The pod hit the ground hard. Teo was thrown around inside. His head hit something and it hurt, but he was alive. The pod was still working. The door still worked. Teo put on his special suit. This suit could keep him safe from the cold and the bad air outside. He opened the pod door and looked around. He saw big rocks everywhere. The sky was dark and purple. Nothing moved. Nothing lived that he could see. He walked away from his pod. He was looking for a place to hide, a place to stay safe. He walked for a long time. His legs were tired. The rocks were very hard to walk on. Some of them cut his suit a little, but the suit still worked. Then Teo saw something. There was a big hole in the side of a tall rock. It looked like a cave. He walked toward it. Inside the cave, it was warm. That was strange. Outside was very cold, but inside the cave, it was warm. Maybe there was heat coming from inside the moon. Teo did not know, but he did not care. He needed warmth. He went deeper into the cave. The walls of the cave looked like they were made of crystal. They shined with different colors. Blue and green and purple light came from the rocks themselves. It was beautiful. It was also very strange. Teo walked deeper and deeper. The cave was getting warmer and warmer. Then he heard a sound. It was a low sound, like a rumble, like something was sleeping. He stopped walking. He stood very still. The sound came again, and again. Then Teo saw them. 3 young creatures. They were Vorth. They were young, maybe only 2 years old, but they were already very big, maybe as tall as a man. They had fur that was dark and thick. They had eyes that shined like gold. They had teeth that were very long and very sharp. Their claws looked like curved swords made of bone. Teo's heart was beating very fast. He could die right now. These creatures could kill him in 1 second. They could use their claws or their teeth. He would not be able to stop them. But Teo did not run. He did not know why. Maybe because there was no other place to go. Maybe because running would make them chase him. So he stood very still and looked at the three young Vorth. The three creatures looked at him. They tilted their heads. They were trying to understand what he was. They had never seen a human before. Their gold eyes looked at him from head to feet. Their noses moved as they smelled the air. Teo did something without thinking. He raised his arms up above his head. Then he moved his body slowly. He was stretching. Every morning of his life, Teo did this. He stretched his arms and his legs and his back. It helped him stay healthy. It helped him feel better. It was a routine. It was something that made him feel less afraid. He stretched slowly and carefully. He bent down and touched his toes. He twisted his body left and right. He moved his arms in big circles. He did all the stretches that he had done every single morning for 20 years. The three young Vorth watched him. They did not attack. They just watched. Their eyes followed his movements. Their ears moved as they listened to his breathing. When Teo finished stretching, he stood up. The three creatures were still watching him. And then, something amazing happened. The smallest Vorth stood up on its back legs. It tried to move its body the way Teo had moved. It was not perfect. It was strange to see a Vorth try to stretch, but the creature was trying. The other two Vorth stood up as well. They tried to copy the movements. They tried to bend and twist the way the human had done. They were learning. They were copying the human. Teo could not believe what he was seeing. These dangerous killers, these apex predators, were trying to copy his stretching routine. They seemed to understand that what he was doing was not an attack. It was something else, something they wanted to learn. The three young Vorth kept trying. They kept moving their bodies. They kept watching Teo to see the movements again. Teo did the stretches one more time, very slowly this time, so the creatures could follow along. By the time he finished, all three Vorth had learned the basic movements. They were doing the stretches together. They were learning his routine. Teo realized something in that moment. He was not going to die today. These creatures had seen something in his movements, something that made them want to copy him instead of kill him. He did not understand why, but he knew that his routine, the simple stretching that he did every morning, had just saved his life on an alien world. 3 days had passed since Teo found the cave. 3 days since the three young Vorth had learned his stretching routine. 3 days since he had first thought he would die. But he was still alive. And the three cubs came to see him every morning. Teo named them. The smallest one, the first one to stand up and try to copy him, he called Dak. The medium one, who was brave and quick to learn, he called Veer. The largest one, who was slow but very strong, he called Seo Jun. Each morning, before the sun came up in the dark purple sky, the three cubs would appear at the entrance to Teo's sleeping area. They would wait for him to wake up. They would wait for him to start the stretching routine, and they would copy every movement he made. Teo began to understand that these creatures were not just animals. They were intelligent. They had thoughts. They had feelings. They wanted to learn. When Teo made a new stretching movement, the cubs would watch it very carefully. They would try to copy it. If they got it wrong, they would try again and again until they got it right. On the 4th day, something new happened. The three cubs did the stretching routine before Teo did it. They had learned the order. They had learned the sequence. They were doing it from memory. Teo laughed when he saw this. He made a loud sound, a happy sound in his chest. The sound surprised the cubs. Their ears went flat against their heads. Their eyes grew big. They did not know what this sound meant, but Teo smiled, and they seemed to understand that the sound was good. They did not run away or attack. Over the next week, Teo taught the cubs more movements. He showed them how to do a deep lunge. This was a position where one leg was bent in front and one leg was straight in back. It was a strong position. It took balance and power to do it right. The cubs loved this movement. They called it the fighter pose in their own language. Teo could not understand their words, but he could see that this position made them feel strong. When they did the fighter pose, they stood very tall. Their chests came out, their heads came up high. They looked powerful and dangerous. But something strange was happening. The stronger the cubs got from doing the stretches, the more they seemed to care about Teo. They were protective of him. They would bring him food sometimes. They would leave dead animals near his sleeping area. Teo understood that this was their way of sharing with him. This was their way of showing that he was part of their family. On the 10th day, a large shadow appeared at the cave entrance. Teo's heart jumped. He thought this was the end. He thought a large Vorth had come to kill him. He thought the mother of the cubs had come to protect her babies and would see Teo as a threat. But the large Vorth did not attack. She just watched. She was very big. Much bigger than the 3 cubs. Her fur was dark like the color of old blood. Her eyes were gold like the eyes of the cubs. But they looked older and wiser. This was Kira. This was the mother of the 3 cubs. Kira watched as Teo did his morning stretching routine. She watched as her 3 sons did the routine with him. She watched for a long time. Her head was tilted. Her nose was moving. She was trying to understand what was happening. After that day, Kira came back every day. She would watch the stretching routine. She would watch Teo teach her cubs. She would watch them learn and grow stronger. And she never attacked. She never tried to hurt Teo. One day Teo was very sick. His food supplies were almost gone. His water was running low. His body felt weak and tired. He did not have the strength to do his stretching routine. He lay on the ground in his sleeping area. He was very cold. His eyes were closed. The 3 cubs came as usual. They waited for Teo to wake up and do the stretching routine. But Teo did not move. They could see that he was sick. They could see that he was weak. Then something amazing happened. Kira came to the sleeping area. She walked over to Teo. Her giant head came down close to his body. Teo opened his eyes. He was ready to die. But Kira did not hurt him. Instead, she did something different. She came back later with food, dead meat, fresh meat, still warm. Teo understood. Kira was feeding him. She was taking care of him. She had accepted him into her family. As Teo ate the food, he grew stronger. His body felt better. The next morning, he was able to get up and do his stretching routine again. The 3 cubs were waiting for him. They had not forgotten what he had taught them. Every morning, the routine became more important. The cubs did not want to hunt without doing the stretching routine first. The stretching made them feel strong. It made them feel ready. It made them feel like they belonged to something. They belonged to a family that had a ritual, a routine, a purpose. Weeks passed. Teo's rescue beacon was supposed to bring help after a few weeks. But no help came. The escape pod had been damaged in the landing. The beacon was broken. No one in the galaxy knew where Teo was. No one knew he was alive. But Teo did not feel alone. He had the 3 cubs. He had Kira. He had a family on this cold, dark moon. And every morning, in a cave of shining crystal, a human and 3 Vorth cubs would stand together and do the stretching routine. They would bend and stretch and move their bodies. They would practice the fighter pose. And with each movement, they would become stronger, not just in their bodies, but in the bond that held them together. Teo realized that his daily routine, the thing that had kept him sane during his travels in space, had become something much more important. It had become the foundation of his survival. It had become the bridge between species. It had become the language that a human and 3 alien creatures could share without words. The stretching routine was no longer just exercise. It was family. It was home. It was hope on a world where hope was very hard to find. The sky above Kethros 7 was always dark and purple. The wind never stopped blowing, the cold never went away, but inside the crystal cave there was warmth, there was light, there was life. Teo had been living in the cave for 3 months now. The 3 cubs had grown. They were bigger and stronger, and they were better at the stretching routine than ever before. They could do every movement perfectly. They could move together like they were one creature instead of 3. Kira had become protective of Teo in a way that was almost motherly. She would bring him food every day. She would stay near him at night, lying at the entrance to his sleeping area, like a guard. The other Vorth on Kethros 7 knew that this human belonged to Kira's family. They stayed away. But then one morning, everything changed. Teo was doing his morning stretches when he heard a sound from outside the cave. It was not the usual wind sound. It was not the usual cave sounds. It was the sound of many Vorth, many voices, many feet on the hard rocks. Kira's body went stiff. Her ears went flat against her head. She made a low sound in her throat, a warning sound, a dangerous sound. The 3 cubs stopped their stretching. They stood close to Teo. They could feel that something was wrong. Dak came over and stood next to Teo's leg. It was like the cub was protecting him, or like he was asking for protection. Then Teo saw them. Shadows at the cave entrance. Big shadows. Many shadows. A large Vorth walked into the cave. His fur was darker than Kira's. His body was bigger. His claws looked longer. His teeth looked sharper. This was Rock. Teo did not know his name yet, but he could feel that this Vorth was different from Kira. This Vorth was mean. This Vorth wanted to hurt things. Behind Rock came 6 more Vorth. They were all big. They were all dangerous. They spread out inside the cave, blocking the exit. Teo realized that they were trapped. They could not run away. Rock walked right up to Kira. His head was higher than hers. He was trying to show that he was stronger, that he was in charge. Rock made a low growling sound. It was a sound that meant challenge. It was a sound that meant war. Kira snarled back at him, but Teo could tell that she was worried. Rock had 7 warriors with him. Kira was alone with 3 small cubs and 1 human. The numbers were bad. The fight would not be fair. Rock looked at Teo. His gold eyes studied the human carefully. Then he looked at the 3 cubs. His mouth turned up, not in a smile, in something that meant hunger, meant want. Rock made a sound to his warriors. They started walking toward the cubs. They were going to take them. They were going to take Teo, too. But then something happened that Teo had not expected. The 3 cubs stepped forward. They did not run. They did not hide. They stood together right in front of Rock and his warriors, and they assumed the fighter pose, the deep lunge, 1 leg bent in front, 1 leg straight in back, strong, balanced, powerful, the pose that they had learned from Teo every single morning for 3 months. Dak did it first, then Veer, then Seojun. All 3 cubs stood in the fighter pose together. They held the position. They did not move. They did not shake. They did not show fear. Rock made a sound that could have been a laugh, a short, loud laugh. The idea of 3 small cubs trying to fight him and his warriors was funny. It was stupid. These cubs were going to die. But then Kira moved. She came and stood beside her cubs. She also assumed the fighter pose. She held it beside her children. And then she looked at Teo. Teo understood what she wanted. He stepped forward, even though his legs were shaking. He stepped into the fighter pose beside Kira. A human, a mother Vorth, 3 young Vorth cubs, all standing in the same position, all standing together, all facing down 7 dangerous warriors. Something in Rock's eyes changed. He was confused. In Vorth culture, there were many things that meant power and strength. Raw power was one thing, but discipline was another thing. Organization was another thing. Structure and ritual meant something. It meant intelligence. It meant a family that worked together. It meant a pack that had purpose. The fighter pose was not just a position. It was a display. It was a statement. It said, "We have trained together. We have learned together. We are stronger together than you are alone." Rock's warriors looked at each other. They were not sure what this display meant. They looked to Rock for direction. The three cubs did not break their pose. They held it perfectly. They held it with power and control. They held it like warriors. They held it like they had done this 1,000 times. Rock took a step back, then another step. He did not want to admit it, but he was unsure. This family had something that his pack did not have. This family had unity. They had a ritual. They had strength that came from being together, not just from being big and mean. Rock looked at Tayo for a long moment. The human did not move. The human held the fighter pose and looked directly at Rock's eyes. Then Rock made a decision. He turned away from Kira and her family. He made a sound to his warriors. They started walking out of the cave, but before they left, Rock turned back one more time. He looked at the cubs. He looked at Kira, he looked at Tayo, and he made a sound that meant this was not over. This was not the end. When Rock and his warriors were gone, the family held their pose for a long time. Then slowly they relaxed. They came together. Kira nuzzled each cub. She came over to Tayo and placed her great head against his body. Tayo realized what had just happened. The stretching routine had saved them. The discipline, the training, the practice every single morning. It had made them strong enough to stand against Rock and his warriors. But Tayo also knew the truth. Rock would come back. Rock was not finished. Rock wanted this territory. Rock wanted the cubs. Rock wanted everything that Kira had. The fight was not over. It was only beginning. And from that day on, the stretching routine became even more important. The cubs practiced harder. Kira practiced harder. Tayo taught them more movements, more positions, more techniques to build their strength and their unity, because they all knew now. Another battle was coming, and they had to be ready. After Rock left the cave, everything changed. Kira brought her family members to the Crystal Cave. Cousins came, aunts came, young Vorth who were alone came. They were all drawn by stories of the strange human and the morning ritual. At first, they were afraid. They did not understand what Tayo was or why he lived with Kira's family. But when they saw the three cubs doing their stretching routine, when they saw how strong and coordinated the cubs were, they became interested. They wanted to learn too. One young female came to the cave and never left. Her name was HFY. She was smaller than the other females in Kira's family. She was not as aggressive. The other Vorth made fun of her. They pushed her around. They did not let her hunt with them. They did not let her sleep in the best places. But when HFY saw the stretching routine, something changed inside her. She watched the cubs do their movements with power and control. She realized that strength did not just come from being big and mean. Strength could come from training. Strength could come from learning. Strength could come from discipline. HFY came to the front of the group when Tayo started his morning routine. She copied every movement exactly. She did the fighter pose with the cubs. She practiced the stretching for hours every day. She wanted to become strong. She wanted to become someone that the other Vorth would respect. Weeks passed. The group in the cave grew bigger. Now there were 5 young Vorth all learning the routine. Kira trained them along with the cubs. The cave had become a place of learning and training. Tayo taught them about breathing. He taught them how to breathe in deeply when they held the fighter pose. He taught them that breathing gave them power. When a Vorth breathed correctly, they could hold their position longer, they could run faster, they could hunt better. The young Vorth learned quickly. They understood that the routine was helping them. They became faster, they became stronger, they became more controlled in their movements, But most importantly, they became a pack, a real pack. Not just a group of Vorth that lived together. They were a family that trained together. A family that had ritual and purpose. HFY became Tai-O's closest friend among the Vorth. She had learned more from him than the others. She understood what he was trying to teach them. She could see the reasons behind each movement. She could feel the power that came from discipline. One day, HFY went out with the hunting party. The other females did not want her to come. But now that she was trained and strong, they could not stop her. She went with them into the dark purple landscape. HFY hunted differently than the other Vorth. She moved with control and balance. She used her fighter pose to spring at her prey. She was fast and deadly. She caught 3 large animals that day. 3. More than any of the other females. When she came back to the cave, the other females looked at her with new respect. She was not small and weak anymore. She was trained and strong. She had discipline. She had power. More Vorth started coming to the cave. They heard about the ritual. They heard about the training. They heard about how it made them stronger. They wanted to learn too. Now, every morning, there were maybe 20 Vorth in front of the cave. They would all stand in rows. They would all do the stretching routine together. They would all practice the fighter pose together. It looked like a military group. It looked like an army. Tai-O taught them new movements. He taught them how to work together in the stretching routine. When they moved as one. When they breathed together. It created something that looked like a dance, but it was much more than a dance. It was power. It was unity. It was strength. HFY started helping Tai-O teach the others. She could speak the Vorth language. Tai-O could not, so she would explain what Tai-O wanted them to do. She would show them how to move. She would help them understand the reasons behind each movement. HFY became like a bridge between the human and the Vorth. She was part of Tai-O's family, but she was also part of the Vorth pack. She understood both worlds. One morning, something surprising happened. When Tai-O started his stretching routine, HFY continued the whole routine without him. She knew every movement. She knew the correct order. She knew the right way to do everything, and the 20 Vorth followed her instead of following Tai-O. They copied her movements. They looked to her for direction. She had become a teacher like Tai-O. Tai-O realized that the routine was no longer just his thing. It was becoming something that the Vorth had made their own. It was becoming part of their culture. It was becoming part of who they were. In the evenings, the Vorth would sit together in the cave. They would talk about the day. They would talk about their hunts. They would talk about how the stretching had helped them. They would make plans for the next day. They would plan their hunts like an organized group, not like wild animals. The Crystal Cave had become a school. It had become a home. It had become a place where a human and many Vorth lived together, learning from each other. But Tai-O had not forgotten about Rock. Rock was still out there. Rock was still a threat. Rock would come back, and when he did, Kira's pack would be ready. The stretching routine had already changed them. It had made them stronger. It had made them smarter. It had made them work together like they had never worked before. Tai-O did not know that he was creating something incredible. Something that would change Vorth culture forever. Something that would spread across the moon and beyond. All he had done was stretch every morning. All he had taught was the power of discipline and routine, but that had been enough to change everything. The day came when Rock finally returned. It was a cold morning, even colder than usual. The wind was stronger. The purple sky looked darker. Tai-O was doing his stretching routine with about 30 Vorth when he heard the sound of many feet on the rocks, the sound of many Vorth coming toward the cave. Rock had come back with more warriors than before. He had come back with his entire pack. Kira's eyes changed when she heard the sound. She knew what was about to happen. This was the challenge. This was the moment that would decide who controlled the territory. Who controlled the resources? Who was the strongest pack on this part of Kethros 7? According to Vorth law, a rival leader could challenge another leader for control of their territory. The challenge had to be decided through physical combat. The winner got everything. The loser had to leave or die. Rock walked to the front of the cave. Behind him were 15 warriors, big ones, dangerous ones. He roared a challenge sound that shook the rocks around the cave. Kira roared back. Teo moved to the side with the other Vorth who were not warriors. He knew that Kira had to face this challenge. She had to prove herself as leader. But before the fight could start, something happened. All of Kira's pack came out of the cave and stood together in a line. They were shoulder to shoulder. They were united. And they all assumed the fighter pose. Every single one of them, 30 Vorth standing in the same position. The same position that Teo had taught them, the same position that showed power and discipline and organization. Rock's warriors looked confused. They did not understand what this meant, but Rock understood. Rock could see that Kira's pack was different from other packs. They had training, they had unity, they had something more than just strength. Heywan stood at the front, right next to Kira. She was the second in charge. She was strong and smart. The other Vorth would follow her example. Teo saw the 3 cubs standing in the fighter pose as well. Dak, Vir, and Seo-jun. They were bigger now, but they were still young. They had grown up with the routine. They had been training since they were just cubs. They were like nothing that Rock had ever seen. The fight started suddenly. Rock attacked Kira with his claws and teeth. But this time, Kira moved differently than she would have before. She had balance. She had control. She had trained her body to move in specific ways. Kira dodged Rock's attack with grace. She spun and struck at him with power. Her movement was like a dance, but it was deadly. Rock was surprised. He had expected Kira to fight like wild animals always fought, with aggression and anger and no plan. But Kira fought with discipline. She moved with purpose. While Kira fought Rock one-on-one, Rock's other warriors tried to attack Kira's pack. But they had not expected what happened next. Kira's pack did not run in different directions. They did not panic. They moved together as one group. They used what Teo had taught them about working together. They moved with coordination and strategy. The 3 cubs attacked together. Dak came from one side, Vir came from another side, Seo-jun came from the front. The warrior they fought had no chance. The cubs had been training together for months. They knew how to move as a team. Heywan fought with incredible power and control. The years of being pushed around by the other Vorth had made her hungry. Hungry to prove herself. Hungry to show them that she was strong. She defeated 3 of Rock's warriors by herself. The other young Vorth in Kira's pack fought with the training that Teo had given them. They used balance. They used breathing. They used the fighter pose to give them power and stability. It was not a long fight. It was not a fair fight. Rock's pack was bigger in numbers, but Kira's pack was better trained. Kira's pack had discipline. Kira's pack had unity. Rock realized he was losing. His warriors were falling. His plan to take over Kira's territory was not going to work. He turned away from Kira and tried to run. He wanted to escape. He wanted to save his own life. But Kira would not let him leave. She chased after him and brought him down. It was a fast, brutal fight. It ended with Rock lying on the hard rocks, unable to move. Kira stood over him, her chest heaving up and down from the fight. Rock had lost. The battle was over. Kira was still the leader. Her territory was still hers. The other warriors from Rock's pack looked at what had happened to their leader. They looked at the united pack that had defeated them. They understood that they could not win. They understood that Kira's pack was stronger. One by one, they stopped fighting. They stepped back. Some of them submitted to Kira's leadership. Some of them ran away. They wanted no part of this group that had learned to fight with such discipline and organization. When it was all over, Kira's pack had won. No one from Kira's pack had died. Some had been hurt, but they would heal. Rock's pack had lost many warriors, and their leader was defeated. Teo came forward and looked at the battlefield. He could see what his stretching routine had done. He could see how discipline and training had made the difference. Kira's pack was not the biggest or the meanest, but they were the best trained. Kira came over to Teo. She nuzzled him with her great head. She was saying thank you. She was saying that he had saved her pack. He had made them strong. He had taught them how to be more than just wild animals. He had taught them how to be a real family, a real pack. The three cubs came over as well. They surrounded Teo. They had grown so much since that first day when they had learned the stretching routine. They were not cubs anymore. They were young hunters. They were warriors. And they owed everything to a human who had simply done his morning stretches. That night, all of Kira's pack gathered in the crystal cave. They did not do their usual stretching routine. They were too tired from the fight. But tomorrow morning, they would do it again. They would gather together and stretch. They would practice the fighter pose. They would remember who they were and what they had learned. The stretching routine had stopped being just exercise. It had become tradition. It had become culture. It had become the thing that made Kira's pack different from all the other packs on Kethros 7. And Teo, sitting in the warm cave surrounded by his alien family, realized that he had done something incredible. He had changed a species. He had taught them the power of discipline, and the power of discipline had set them free.